What's up, everybody? It's Into Crypts of Beer again. Brett, whatever you want to call me. And as you can probably tell, I have a little bit of sun. I just got back from my parents' house. We went out for a boat ride the other day. Got a lot of vitamin D that day, so yeah, I'm burning up. Not as much as I was yesterday, but I'm still burning up. But it's all good. It was a much needed time off from work, so whatever. Um, and before I get on with the main part of the video, I just want to give you guys a quick update. Speaking of work, um, my workplace just got a new client, and this is kind of huge news for us. So we're probably going to be doing loads and loads and loads of overtime. We're probably going to be working straight throughout the week, 12 hours a day, Monday through Sunday. So it's going to be crunch time for a while, so I don't know how often I'll be able to squeeze a video in, but I'll try my hardest to squeeze something in every now and then. We'll see. That being said, I have a question that probably gets asked a lot by a lot of beer connoisseurs. How did you get into beer? And more importantly, how did you get into craft beer? Now, I actually never had my first alcoholic beverage till I was 21. Not as hardcore as some people might have thought, but sorry to disappoint, guys. But yeah, alcohol was always sort of it was kind of a touchy subject in my household. My parents didn't exactly approve of it for the longest time. Um, so, it was kind of a no-no, like, do not drink at all. But it was whatever. But yeah, ironically enough, my first alcoholic beverage, like I said, was when I was 21, and I was having it, more ironically, with my dad, and it was a glass of red wine. And for some reason, I guess my dad's one of those that he puts wine over everything else. I don't know why that is, but I guess wine is the classy drink. But at any rate, I never actually had my first beer till about not quite a year later. I was dating this girl at the time, and she was a part of this group at the university that's local to where I live now. And said group was going on a spring break trip. So, of course, she invited me to come along, and I went with them. And there just so happened to be a bar within walking distance from our room. So everybody who was 21 or above would go to this bar. Well, I think we only went like twice that whole week, but anyway, yeah. And that's where I had my first beer. Of course, it was only a sip because I was like, beer, you know. Um, but it was a Yingling, and they were serving it in plastic cups. So yeah, I had my first beer in a plastic cup. Not exactly the best thing to drink beer in, but it was what was available. Whatever. Um, but yeah, I didn't like it because my palate wasn't very used to it. I mean, the red wine the year before was still a lot for me to drink. So, it was just, at the time, I hated it. But, my brother was kind of getting into beer at that time too. So, whenever I'd come up to visit him, he'd let me try one out. I hated it, but I figured, well, if this one beer is not to my liking, maybe this one is. So I'll just try a bunch of different beers and see if there's one that I actually do like. And I'm glad I made that decision now because, and by the way, this is a Bell's Winter White. Very out of season, um, but it's a drinkable beer. You know, I'm not reviewing it or anything, of course, but it's a drinkable beer. Nothing special. Anyway, anyway, um, so yeah, I'd visit my brother, and he'd let me try this beer out of his fridge. I'm like, I don't know. He let me try this beer. It's better than the last one, but still, it's beer. You know. Then there was one time in particular. I remember I was going to visit him. And by the way, I might have mentioned it already, but he was a student at the university here. But anyway, so I went to visit him this one time, and before I actually came up, one of the local fire departments in our area was having a barbecue. And that is some of the best damn barbecue I've ever had in my life. Like, there is no restaurant anywhere that has ever topped their barbecue. I'm dead serious. Um, but at any rate, yeah, they were having that barbecue, and we went to this like every year. And of course, my brother was at the university, so he couldn't really get any unless I came up to visit him that weekend. So that's what we agreed on. You know, I'd bring him a plate of the barbecue. And he said, before I actually went up there, um, he said something about beer and barbecue goes very well together, or at least that's what I've read. And then I was like, oh, I guess I'll try it out then. So I I get the plate of barbecue, and I drive to go visit him, and it was like an hour away from where our house was at the time. And I get up there to where he is, up here now to where he is. Anyway, and so we dig into the barbecue, and he's got these beers from a local brewery, and the name of this brewery is Natty Greens. And if you live in North Carolina and you drink craft beer, or even if you just drink beer in general, you've probably heard the name Natty Greens. They're very popular here in North Carolina. They're so popular, in fact, that I've seen them in the West. I've seen them in the East. I've seen them everywhere, even in gas stations. Like, you know, they're pretty huge here. They actually have two locations. Their main location, of course, is here in Greensboro, and then their other location is in Raleigh. And the Raleigh location, of course, is about a year or two old. I think it's like maybe 2 or 3 years old, but that's not important. Anyway, well, he had their Buckshot Amber Ale in his refrigerator. Um, and I guess you could say that was my first craft beer. Um, and so we broke those out, and we had it with the barbecue. It actually turned out pretty good. Like, that was the first time I'd had a beer. I mean, I was still getting used to it, but at the same time, I was like, I think if I had a few more of these, I think I'd actually grow to like it pretty good. So later that weekend, we actually went to the pub itself, and we had it on tap. And I was like, dude, this is way better on tap. Like, I was just kind of amazed at the difference between a bottle and on tap. I mean, I was still new to beer, so whatever. So yeah, that's kind of where it started for me as far as beer in general and craft beer. So I guess you could say, even though I technically got started on the more domestic stuff, um, really I got started on a local brewery. So hey, but then, you know, I transferred to the university that I went to, and conveniently enough, there was a beer store right there at the edge of campus. 2 beer stores, as a matter of fact. And I would go to both of them. Of course, I went to one more than the other. Um, and the guys there basically, like, they were a huge influence on my taste in beer. Um, they actually got me into IPAs. And if you don't know me by now, I am a huge, huge, huge hophead. I love hops. I love IPAs. I'm a little surprised I haven't reviewed one on this channel yet, but I will. Um, but yeah, IPAs were my thing for the longest time. Uh, Before I got into IPAs, though, I mean, they were just kind of slowly getting me into the hoppier stuff. I was drinking more amber ales, and then eventually I was like, what's a pale ale? And they were explaining to me what that was. It's a beer with some hops in it. Okay, well, what's an IPA? Well, that's basically the big brother of the pale ale. It's an India pale ale, and it's got double the hops, or triple, or whatever. And I'm like, well, what are hops? Asking those typical questions. And so they let me try some mixed six packs. That was pretty cool that they would let you do the mixed six pack. And I tried a bunch of different ones, and at the time, I liked most of them, but I hated some of them. Some of them were too hoppy. Some of them were just right. Then eventually, I kind of sort of, the hops grew on me. The hoppy flavor grew on me. Um, so that's basically how I got started on IPAs, and that was my main thing for the longest time. I'd never drink anything else. The only other kind of beer that I would drink was the Stone Arrogant Bastard. I don't know what it was about that beer, and I actually haven't had one of those in a while, and I'm a little tempted to get one. But yeah, it was hoppy, but it was also dark. But it wasn't like, see, I didn't like dark beers for the longest time until probably earlier this year or late last year. I don't know what it was about dark beers. I just could never get past the. I never was a coffee person either, so I guess that might have been the thing. But I love stouts now. Um, I love stouts. I love porters. I love dark ales. All that stuff. Like now, I'm basically at the point where I can pretty much drink almost anything you put in front of me. I just don't do sours. I don't do like really, really syrupy, thick beers. I could barely get past the 90-minute IPA from Dogfish Head. Um, Beers like that. I mean, I'll still drink it, but it takes me a long time to do it. So, I don't want to puke my guts out or anything. But yeah, that's basically how I got started on beer and how I got started on craft beer. So, how did you guys get started on beer? And how did you get started on craft beer? What was your first beer in general? And then what was your first craft beer? Let me know in the comments below. If you have a Tumblr, then please feel free to follow me. I'll put the link in the description as always. And if you haven't subscribed to me here yet, then please feel free to do so. I look forward to hearing from you guys. So until next time, cheers.